Now, a Channel 4 News investigation tonight, they say they are not a mercenary outfit, but Blackwater USA has one of the most profitable private armies in the world. Now they're coming to California, and one LA activist is gearing up to take them on.
Breaking news story tonight. The 4 American civilians were ambushed and killed in Fallujah.
They're unforgettable. These horrific images from Iraq in March of 2004. The bodies of 4 American civilians burned and strung up by an Iraqi mob. Few of us knew at the time that the victims were employees of a company called Blackwater, one of the fastest growing private security outfits in the world.
These are former SEALs and former highly trained Army personnel. They have helicopters, military helicopters. They have tanks, and they report to no one.
Rick Jacobs first learned about Blackwater while making this documentary about the 180,000 private contractors, including Blackwater's own, who work in the war zone, outnumbering even American troops.
We told the story of Blackwater as probably the most egregious of the private contractors that have really privatized the war in Iraq.
Now Rick is worried about another aspect of Blackwater's agenda, its plans to create a massive training base in this desert east of San Diego.
Blackwater arguably is already on its way to becoming auxiliary policemen in this state.
Jacobs, an LA-based political activist, has organized a grassroots crusade to keep Blackwater out of California. And he's attracted some powerful allies, like Congressman Bob Filner of San Diego.
The same group that's training for foreign mercenary troops can be used in domestic situations, whether it's a riot or a disaster. And that worries me that we don't have any way of knowing what they're doing really.
So why does Blackwater inspire such intense emotion? Speaking broadly, it's just a private company doing business here and abroad.
We're not a mercenary army.
Brian Bonfiglio of Blackwater West.
Blackwater as a whole, as a company, does not engage in offensive operations, never have, never will. And we've never worked for any other state other than the United States of America. So mercenary doesn't apply.
And he says the company is accountable to the law and whoever contracts its services. Not everyone is reassured.
Out of the rubble of 9/11, it's risen to become one of the most powerful private actors operating in the so-called war on terror. It has
Jeremy Scahill, author of the book Blackwater.
Blackwater operates the largest private military base in the world in North Carolina. It has operatives deployed in 9 countries around the world, and they boast of having 20,000 troops at the ready that could be deployed at a moment's notice.
After the Fallujah disaster, says Scahill, Blackwater took legal action to keep the families of its own slain operatives from questioning its policies in open court. And he says it got more government contracts from the conservative friends of its billionaire founder, Eric Prince.
It's a company that's operated in secrecy, and it's largely protected by the uber-secretive administration of George W. Bush. They don't appear to be accountable to the elected representatives of the U.S. Congress or to the taxpayers who foot the bill.
Gradually, says Scahill, Blackwater has begun to move in a new direction.
This is a company that increasingly has its sights set on domestic deployments inside of the United States.
During the Katrina disaster, says Scahill, he spotted armed Blackwater operatives in New Orleans, initially looking for work, finally hired as protection by FEMA and private citizens.
Where I think it gets incredibly disturbing is when you have the prospect of wealthy individuals hiring what essentially amount to a heavily armed militia to, quote-unquote, protect their property.
Last April, a top Blackwater official, Coffer Black, became senior advisor to GOP presidential hopeful Mitt Romney, thus expanding the company's political potential. Meantime, Blackwater has set up shop at various locales across the country, a development that particularly troubles Rick Jacobs.
Blackwater's objective is to have a base of operation in just about every geographic area of the United States. They have one in Chicago now. They have one in North Carolina.
And now, he says, they're looking to snap up this patch of territory near San Diego.
This one's very close to the Mexican border. Some people argue that Blackwater's attempt to be near the Mexican border is a way to militarize that border with private security people, with mercenaries, so that the federal government doesn't have to get its hands dirty.
Jacobs says Blackwater wooed local officials into green-lighting the project.
Their facilities consist of, and in this case they've advertised will consist of, a driving range of 10 football fields in length, several firing ranges, about 350 people there at any given time.
It's a picture confirmed by Brian Bonfiglio of Blackwater West.
A lot of, if not a majority, of this facility will be leased out by law enforcement organizations, and the same holds true for the military.
Publicly, the proposed facility is touted as a training base for police and security personnel.
They'll have their unit instructors come out here with units prior to deployment, conduct their training, and then go back to their bases. Small arms training, no explosives taking place out here, no artillery, no tanks.
Whatever the training, says Jacobs, if the police or military are involved, this gives Blackwater a relationship with them it could exploit in an emergency.
Imagine that organization just loose in this state, not answering to anyone.
Sound far-fetched? Jacobs points out that a former spokesman for Blackwater, Chris Bertelli, has until recently been working for Governor Schwarzenegger's Homeland Security Committee and is still attached to his administration.
Governor Schwarzenegger comes out of a certain heroic film background. You can imagine him in various roles where he saves the day. And Governor Schwarzenegger may have a very good heart about all of this. He really probably does want to save the day if there's ever a reason to do so. Now he has a guy next to him whose history and background is hiring guns.
Bertelli declined to be interviewed, and Brian Bonfiglio of Blackwater West says he's had no dealings with a former company official. But he does confirm Blackwater is hoping to get into Border Patrol work.
I do believe that augmenting a much-needed force here on the borders, whether it be on the Mexican border or even the Canada border, would be something that we would potentially look at.
Some people who live near the proposed San Diego facility support it.
Anything that can seal or tighten that border is for the good.
The engineers have come up with a computer model for the noise that indicated that the community would not hear any noise coming up out of that valley.
Other locals are opposed.
The fire danger will be enormous from their armory. The noise will be intolerable to people who live anywhere within 5 or 6 miles. The traffic will be enormous.
We love the beauty of the place as it is, and we want to fight to keep it that way.
Jacob says his campaign against the proposed facility is gaining support, and Congressman Filner is planning to sponsor legislation to bring private security outfits like Blackwater under tighter federal control.
We have seen democracies undermined by mercenary soldiers. This is something that all Americans need to watch very carefully.
Blackwater says it supports enforcement of all U.S. and international laws. The California Office of Emergency Services says it is unlikely to contract from the private sector in an emergency. Both statements I gave you there can be found on our website, knbc.com.